Doc Marten boots have been a cultural icon since they were invented in 1947 and when the very first pair was made in England in 1960. And they were originally designed to help old ladies with sore feet and eventually became adopted by several different groups and subcultures because originally they're a really high quality, long-lasting boot that was extremely comfortable because that's what they were designed for in the 40s when everything else was just all really hard, heavy leather. The Airwear sole revolutionized comfort in boots. But like many brands that we've reviewed on this channel, they eventually moved to foreign mass production in the 90s, and slowly the quality degraded and comfort degraded, durability. All these things that made Doc Martens who they are and this cultural icon have slowly been sacrificed to the gods of margins, to a point where they're now just a shadow of their former selves and really only Doc Marten's a name. And we know this obviously because we've cut apart about every type of Doc Marten boot in the hopes that we'll find either the made in England ones are better, or this version's better, or this leather's better. And some of them are better than others, like the made in England ones aren't absolutely terrible, but none of them get anywhere close to the former glory that really built the Doc Marten name. But fortunately, another manufacturer in England, Goral, recognized this problem and decided to make the Doc Marten style of boot the way that they think it should be made while still maintaining the things that made Doc Martens what they used to be. So they sent us this pair to cut in half and run through our test to really see if they've made the Doc Marten boot that Doc Marten should have made. And thanks to Goral for sending us these boots and for sponsoring this video. And just in full transparency, we've worked with Goral in the past and we've done a collaboration with them, just so you're aware. But just like all sponsored videos, if you disagree, let me know specifically what you disagree with and why, and give us some reasoning, otherwise it doesn't help anybody out. So now if you don't know who Goral, why did Goral think they could take on this project and tackle this idea? Well, they've already completely slayed the cultural giant of making a classic white sneaker in the Common project, because we did the white sneaker series and they far and away won the best built. They're a true made in England manufacturer, but more importantly, there's one thing that uniquely makes Goral qualified to do this, because until recently they made the uppers for both Doc Martens and Solaveres, primarily the 1460 and 1461. So they might be the most qualified to do this. And you might be thinking, well, aren't they going to use the exact same leathers? Well, that's what we're going to find out. So let's start looking at the leather first, because this is not the cheap leather that you get on Doc Martens, not even the cheaper leather you get on the made in England Doc Martens. This is Chrome Excel. And then if you don't know what Chrome Excel is, it's one of the most popular leathers in the world when that higher echelon of boots, because it's made in the world famous Horween Tannery based in Chicago, Illinois, that's really popularized this oil infused, highly conditioned, really durable leather that has a nice sheen to it. Basically everything that you see from the outside of Doc Martens that you wish the leather in reality performed the way it looked, that's what Chrome Excel is. And so right off the bat, they've already improved the leather significantly. It's 2.4 millimeters thick versus the 1.8 in the thinner Doc Marten leathers. It took 126 pounds to puncture through versus the 56 pounds it took for the Doc Martens. It has way more grain than the Doc Marten leather. It has a lot better finish on top that doesn't flake off like every single pair of Docs that always do. And that does not happen with Chrome Excel. It will scratch off because this is a T-core style leather where the dye is not struck all the way through, but a lot of people really like that because you get these little pops of color that ages really beautifully without flaking up. But there is a downside to using this Chrome Excel. It's the top tier leather, and it's the significantly more expensive than this really cheap junk leather that Doc Marten uses. And that reflects in the overall price, because if you didn't know, the brand is obviously Goral. The style is the Charmin. They weigh 1 pound 12 ounces compared to the regular Docs about 1 pound 10 ounces. So they still have kept it lightweight, which is a huge key factor in why people love Docs compared to obviously a really heavy Pacific Northwest boot that weighs twice that. And they retail for $447 versus the $170 for the Chinese Docs or the Asian-made Docs and $260 for the made in England Docs. So a significant difference in price. Literally twice the price of your regular Docs. And like I mentioned, they're made in England, and the way that Goral's positioned this boot is the Charmin boot is a classic lace-up 7-eye derby with a pared back minimal upper on our new pitch rubber cup sole. The perfect versatile boot for everyday wear. And if you want a pair of these, be sure to check them out via link in my description. So my hope is that the price reflects not just the upper leather being improved, but the whole boot through and through, and you don't have any of this synthetic junk that just makes these boots wear out faster than sneakers half the time. And one interesting thing is that the weight of these boots, because they've used higher quality components and better materials seemingly, but they've kept it really lightweight, which is a huge part of why people love Docs, because they're essentially a sneaker but in the shape of a boot. And from the description, it sounds like that's what Goral has attempted to do here, and from the weight, it's pretty clear they've achieved that to some degree, but we don't know what materials they use. But if we start looking at the inside, you can see this is fully lined all the way through the quarters and the vamp, and you've even got a little bit of the Chrome Excel around the collar versus regular Docs. Obviously, they're not lined. And so it's gonna make them a little bit harder to break in. That's probably where some of that extra weight came from. And that lining is gonna help keep this Chrome Excel leather from wrinkling way too much, wearing out faster. And the lining leather is a pretty good leather. It's a lightly pigmented leather. It's really thin, and just a little over 1 millimeter thick. So that puts your overall thickness of the upper, including the upper leather and the lining leather, at a little over 3 millimeters thick. Versus a regular pair of Docs, it's 1.8 millimeters thick. So that could easily be a pro or con depending on what you value, because some people like the really light, simple upper. Other people buy Docs because they want the support of the boot, but then they're sorely disappointed when it's 1.8 millimeters thick, it's floppy, terrible leather. But clearly the Goral, when it comes to the upper leather and the lining leather, is better than the Docs in every conceivable way. Then if we pull out the insole, so this comes with the classic Goral insole, leather topped, nice thick soft insole. Versus Doc Martens, you like in the made in England ones, you don't even get a half sock liner. You're literally just standing on top of fiberboard. Versus regular Docs, you at least have a little bit of a sock liner with what looks like a latex foam underneath. But even in the forefoot, you're still standing on fiberboard, which not that big of a deal, but usually 9 times out of 10, the fiberboard lasting board is just a structural component, and you want to be standing on leather or some sort of insole or some sort of foam. And so that's where some of the comfort starts to slip with Doc Martens, because it's kind of a halfway built boot. Versus the Gorals, obviously you have the insole, but more importantly, underneath, the lasting board is leather. And that's why Goral, we chose them as the winner of the white sneaker series. And that's why I still think they make the most durable, highest quality sneakers that you can buy at any kind of scale. Because this leather is gonna do everything that you don't get from the fiberboard. It's gonna last a lot longer, it's gonna absorb your sweat more and not actually stink, where this fiberboard stinks pretty much immediately. This stuff is literally just glued in and could easily come apart. When you go to resole this, it's not strong enough for the cobbler to resole, and we'll go over the other resoling problems with Doc Martens later. And so it's just better in every way. The only thing that the fiberboard has a leg up on leather is that it's a little bit easier to break in. But I promise, breaking in the Gorals with an insole is gonna be a lot easier than breaking in a pair of Docs without an insole. Then next to the one thing that Doc Martens used back in the day to really build this brand, it's the airwear bouncing soles that a lot of people thought that was like pressurized air. And then as we've cut them apart over the years, we really show that this is just a column-based outsole, nothing really special. It's TPU, it wears out really, really fast. You only have like a few millimeters of lugs, and it's a shadow of this former really long-lasting, durable, and soft outsole that they used to have even into the 90s before they moved to foreign mass production, to a point now where one of the biggest gripes people have with Docs is you wear them like 20 miles and you've already like worn this part of the boot flat. So what did Goral do to try to solve that? Well, they brought back a lot more of this luggy commando sole that came on a lot of the early Docs, but it's not so luggy that it looks like a work boot, but it still has that combat look. It's a little bit more similar to the higher platform style of Docs. You know, obviously, if there's one thing that is a little bit different aesthetically from the Docs compared to the Gorals, it is that outsole. You don't have that yellow stitching. It creeps up the sidewall just a little bit more, and it doesn't have that two-toning look of the Doc Martens. And as for the hardnesses, the Doc Martens are a 50 Shore versus the Gorals are a 70 Shore. So it's a little bit harder of an outsole, but it's gonna last a lot longer because it's a harder outsole, and it's not TPU, it's a rubber outsole. But one of the biggest differences is how these two boots are built, or basically how the upper of the boot is attached to the bottom of the boot. Because people look at Doc Martens and they assume it's a really high quality boot, it's gonna last a really long time because you see this iconic yellow stitching. You must think, oh, traditionally made, it says it's Goodyear welted on the website, it has the stitching on the outside, it must last forever. Well, a lot of people have learned the hard way that these soles split on a regular enough basis that it is a problem that is known in the Doc community, because instead of sewing it together like a true Goodyear welt, they just take a really hot knife and they run it along the TPU outsole and the TPU welt and heat weld it together, which can be really strong, but we've seen through all the various videos we've done, you can literally just tear them apart. If it gets really cold outside and you're walking around too much, that cold weather can cause it to split, because it's only less than 1/4 of an inch of surface area that is heat welded. Everything else is just loose. And so it's kind of Goodyear welted, but not really. And you don't get any of the benefits. Versus with Goral, this is where you really start to see why Goral might have been the perfect one to make this boot. They've recently started making boots, but they're mostly known for making sneakers. And Docs being a sneaker in the shape of a boot. Goral took that same concept and used a cup sole instead of a traditional Goodyear welted boot. And almost more importantly, because of how expensive these boots are, it allows you to easily resole these. Any cobbler worth their salt will be able to throw a new outsole on, do that sidewall stitch, because this is a lot more similar to a sneaker that has that sidewall stitch that wraps around, because that's exactly what this is. It's basically a sneaker outsole, but in boot form, where you have that sidewall stitch that wraps all the way around. And because Goral is really the only sneaker company that's doing a true Blake stitch construction with that leather elasting board that we talked about, you have that outside sidewall stitch and you have the Blake stitch sewing that insole to the upper that's tucked underneath. So it's like if you took the most durable sneaker construction and applied it to a boot, which fits perfectly with this whole idea of Doc Martens being a boot sneaker. And there's gonna be a lot of people that are like,
no, you should have made it like all leather, like stack that thing up.
and I honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing one of those. But for a lot of people, that's not why they're buying Docs. And they're buying it because of all these things. And like I mentioned, these are expensive. You know, they're twice the price of Docs. But the beauty of this and where people will be able to justify the price is Docs are a one-time use boot. You wear this outsole off, wear it down, doesn't even have to split, you know, whatever early cause of failure you're gonna get from this, you're gonna take it to a cobbler, and a cobbler's like, we don't resole Docs. They're too hard. We don't have a heat welding thing. We're not gonna slap a new outsole on and rebuild this whole boot because it's gonna cost you more to rebuild this than it will to buy a brand new pair of Docs. Versus the Gorals are twice the price, but you will easily be able to get 2 or 3 resoles out of this. So it's that same argument over and over when it comes to high quality footwear. Is it an investment that you're gonna plan on getting it resold and really get the longevity out this, reduce all your, this is the funniest thing. Like Doc Martens always push like,
you know, eco-friendly, we're saving this, we have good causes, we are a good company, we're altruistic.
Then they make the cheapest boots that wear out fast and they end up in the landfill 6 months later. So if that's your angle, this is a lot less environmental impact because you're able to wear it more. But more importantly, once you have it broken in, that insole breaks in the shape of your foot, all this breaks in, this 3 millimeters of total leather fits you perfectly. You don't have to start over when this outsole wears off like you do a regular pair of Docs. You can use them over and over and over, get them resold. There is an argument either way because some people are gonna want to just buy a brand new pair of Docs every year. Some people are gonna want this. And that's where that price and value and resole versus disposable over and over, that argument comes into play here. But I don't think that's enough to fully justify the price increase from everything that we've seen. So let's get this thing cut in half, see what else on the inside, see what other materials they use, and really decide if this is the true Doc Marten killer, the way Doc Marten should have been made, a true made in England boot by the company that used to sew the upper. And I forgot, one really cool thing is this Puritan stitch is a famous stitch on the Doc Martens because it's not a regular stitch. It has these little loops that allow it to flex a little bit more without overstraining the thread. It also is all sewn at the exact same time, all 3 threads. And Goral did that exact stitch right here because they used to make the uppers. So let's cut this thing in half and see what's on the inside. All right, we got it cut in half, so let's see what's inside. So there's actually a lot more layers on the inside than I expected because I thought it was just gonna be really simple and basically built like their sneakers. They don't have much of a cork filling, but you can see they have a big old slab of cork. It's like 4 millimeters thick. It's sheet cork. So this is gonna break into the shape of your foot. It's gonna give you a little bit of squish and impact resistance as you wear these in. Then above that, you have that yellow wool that they put in their sneakers. But then they have a layer of compressed cardboard, which supports the shank, and then a pink fiberboard, and then that leather that is topped on top of the fiberboard. And then you can clearly see what I was talking about now with that Blake stitch showing the upper that's tucked underneath, and then that sidewall stitch showing the upper to the outsole. And as for the other components, you can see they've flipped that counter cover, flesh out. It's gonna give you a lot more durability than these fake leather counter covers on docks. The actual counter itself is leather board. So basically everything that you could upgrade in a pair of docks is upgraded in this. Is it the ultra high end? Is everything leather, everything natural materials? It's not. And as much as I wish it was that, there is a value in having lighter weight materials and the flexibility of them. Would you rather have all the leather? It's gonna make it a lot heavier, it's gonna be a lot stiffer, it's not gonna bend, it's not gonna break in as fast. Or do you want some sacrifices in the natural materials to give you some of the attributes of the docks that have made them popular and why people actually buy docks? That's another one of those personal things. Me, I'd rather have thing chuck full of leather, but it'd be a 3-pound boot, it's gonna be stiff, and you're basically wearing a Pacific Northwest boot at that point. And so, you know, it's this give and take that we're always playing with these components and these materials. And you compare that to a pair of docks where you literally just have the lasting board, like a felted material, and then a patch of foam at the ball of your foot. And like some of the other docks, you don't even have a full lasting board. It's like there's little reliefs in it that make it wear out even faster. To me, this looks exactly like what it is. It's like a high-end sneaker company made a pair of boots that are supposed to feel like a sneaker. But does that mean that these are worth twice the price of a pair of docks? Well, we've already gone through a lot of materials, with the leather being better, the lining being better, the insole being better, the lasting board being better, the outsole being better, the filling material being better, even the wool filling being better. It has a shank, counter covers better, the counter itself is better. Everything is better in this boot, which is gonna increase the price. And these are made in England, where these cheaper docks for 170 bucks are made in Asia, and the made in England docks are 270 bucks. So looking at everything and looking at all the components, I think there is a pretty clear case to be made that these are worth that. So comparing them against all the different kinds of docks, you will get twice as many wears out of this boot. I don't think that's a controversial statement at all. You do have significantly better materials. So from a dollar per wear perspective, it is worth twice the price. From a materials perspective, I think there's an argument to be made that they are worth the extra price, especially with the labor that goes into it. You compare this to other traditional made boots in this price range, they're gonna have a lot more leather, it's gonna have a Goodyear welt. So from that dollar per wear perspective, the traditional made boot's gonna last a lot longer. But the traditional boot, like we talked about nonstop, you know, in this particular video, is gonna be harder to break in. It's not gonna be as flexible. It's not gonna be as comfortable on your feet. That's what this boot is. It kind of rides between those two lines of the traditional made boot and the cheap Doc Marten boot. It sits right in the middle, finding that sweet spot between that durability and comfort, balancing those equations to make really what Doc Marten should be. That comfortable, lightweight, but durable boot that you can really rely on, that Doc Marten made their name off of, that clearly, you watch any review of Doc Martens, it does not do that anymore. These do not live up to the name that built Doc Martens. And so ultimately, did Goral pull it off? Did they make a better Doc Marten? I think they did. I think there's gonna be some people that say it needs more leather, it needs more this, it needs more that. But that wasn't the goal of this boot. And for this specific goal, I think they pulled it off. There's really only one thing that I could point to that might sway one person one way or the other, and that is this little yellow stitch that I believe that Doc Marten has. I guess it'd be like a design patent, because I don't think any other company in England can make a boot with a yellow stitch without Doc Martens coming after them. And obviously the outsole looks a little bit different. And so the look might be the only thing that Doc Marten still has a leg up on Goral with, because this is the iconic silhouette. This is the yellow stitch that has made them popular. It's that two-tone outsole, this big, bulbous, way too big upper that nobody actually fits into, the lack of support. Some of the characteristics that are the flaws of Doc Martens are what make Doc Martens what they are. But let me know what you think. Is there anything that you would have changed? What is your take on this? Do you think they pulled off a better Doc Marten that's actually made in England from all these materials? And let me know specifically if you do disagree with something, what it is and why, and give some justification. And thank you guys for supporting this video and all the videos that we make and all the handmade leather goods that we make here in the shop by hand. And because of all your support, we have some wild stuff planned this year. This year is gonna be crazy. We have some cool stuff coming down, and it's all because of all your guys' support and subscribing to this channel, supporting all these videos. Without your guys' help, none of it would be possible, so thank you guys. See ya.